My alpha roommate has been acting rather peculiar of late. He incessantly gazes at the barren nape of my neck, proclaiming that I possess an alluring scent, exhibiting an overwhelming sense of possessiveness towards me. I feign composure. I am merely a beta who cannot be marked. Yet, he directly pins me down, his expression cold and devoid of compassion. How would you know unless you try? As I awaken from a slumber, an intense feeling of pressure suddenly envelopes me, accompanied by a sound of restrained, labored breathing. I turn over, initially indifferent to it. However, after a moment, I reluctantly lift my hand to part the bed curtain, peering across the room. There sits my alpha roommate, Lu Wenchuan, on his bed, head bowed. His profile is sharply defined in the dim light. I can vaguely discern the veins on his arms, bulging from the strain of restraint. He is in a sensitive phase. It must be quite uncomfortable and irritable for him. The dormitory is likely saturated with the oppressive pheromones of Lu Wenchuan, imbued with a sense of ferocity. As a beta, I cannot detect them, yet I still feel an unsettling shiver run down my spine. Is this the formidable power of a top-tier alpha? I let out a sigh, sitting up to draw the bed curtain aside, addressing him in a gentle tone. Lu Wenchuan, The alpha lifts his gaze towards me with precision, akin to a wolf lurking in the shadows, his eyes sharp and piercing. I strive to maintain my composure. Do you need me to contact the management office for assistance? No need, he pauses before adding, but could you please escort me to the infirmary? I've run out of my suppressants. I nod vigorously. Of course. I leap from my bed, don my shoes, and turn on the light, then approach his bedside to offer support. However, Lu Wenchuan sidesteps my hand, his demeanor distant. No need, I can walk on my own. I awkwardly retract my hand, feeling somewhat disheartened. Suddenly, he inquires nonchalantly, forgive me, but what is your name? Well, it seems that after a month of cohabitation, he remains unaware of my name. Perhaps all us betas are simply lacking in presence. I am Wenmo. 2. As Lu Wenchuan went to receive the suppressants, I sat idly outside, lost in thought. I could vaguely hear the school doctor's remarks, resonating with a sense of relief. I was on the verge of reporting you to the administration for monitoring. Your pheromone levels are high. If they spiral out of control, could spell trouble for all the students in your building. I'll be more careful next time, Lu Wenchuan replied. We need to adjust your drip to lower the pheromone levels. Your condition remains unstable. All right. His voice was faint, tinged with exhaustion. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sympathy. It must be quite challenging for him. The sensitive period arrived with remarkable punctuality each month. Meanwhile, we, on the other hand, were fortunate, unambitious, pure, and unaffected by pheromones. We were merely suitable candidates, akin to livestock. When Lu Wenchuan suddenly called for me, I quickly rose and stepped inside. I found him lounging in a chair, and 4 bag hanging from his arm. His posture was so relaxed that it resembled someone unwinding at a club rather than receiving medical care. What's up? I inquired. Could you help me with the 4? I need to use the restroom. Perhaps sensing the absurdity of his request, he added, Is that all right? I snapped back to reality, scratching my face. Of course. As Lu Wenchuan stood, I followed behind him, holding the 4 bag. The restroom in the infirmary was quite clean and bore the scent of disinfectant. I wrinkled my nose and politely directed my gaze towards the ceiling. Yet, I could still hear the sound of Lu Wenchuan unzipping his pants, followed by the unmistakable sound of water, loud and prolonged. I blinked awkwardly, my gaze inadvertently drifting downward for a moment, only to have my ears flush with heat. Indeed, he was exceptional in every regard. Embarrassed, I attempted to avert my gaze, only to lock eyes with Lu Wenchuan's reflection in the mirror. He raised an eyebrow, an undeniable sharpness lurking behind his calm demeanor. Instantly, I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. 3. Before long, Lu Wenchuan's sensitive period subsided, and we returned to the dormitory. After a long night, he seemed relatively well, while I could barely keep my eyes open. Nevertheless, I persevered and poured him a cup of warm water. Lu Wenchuan, the school doctor advised you to drink some warm water and sweat it out before sleeping. Thanks, he replied, turning his head to look at me with his dark eyes. I yawned, tears pooling in my eyes, and my voice subconsciously softened. No need to be polite. If you feel unwell, just call for me. Can I call you if I need to use the restroom? Well, I hesitated. Let us not push it. With that, I hurriedly turned and climbed onto my bed. I faintly heard Lu Wenchuan chuckle. I didn't dare look back, fearing he might hold my earlier indiscretion against me. The next day, I went about my routine, attending classes, working part-time, and eating alone. Just as I settled down with a bowl of clear soup noodles in the cafeteria, I spotted Lu Wenchuan walking in. Naturally, the attention of those around us shifted in his direction. Many seized the opportunity to greet him and foster connections. It was only natural. Lu Wenchuan was not only outstanding but also came from a privileged background, embodying the quintessential campus heartthrob. Thus, I, a mere bystander, had no intention of inserting myself into that sphere. I lowered my head and continued eating. Moments later, a shadow fell across my table, accompanied by a rather unpleasant voice. When Mo, long time no see. I looked up with a neutral expression to meet the gaze of my former roommate, Zhang Hang, who was equally insufferable. What do you want? Can't I greet you if there's nothing else? Please don't disturb me if we're not familiar. I lifted my bowl, intending to find a busier spot to eat, but Zhang Hang firmly pressed down on my shoulder, his expression somewhat menacing. Unsurprisingly, he was attempting to exert his phenomenal influence over me. However, I was not easily swayed. His feeble attempts had never affected me, not in the past and not now. Unless he possessed the same caliber as Lu Wenchuan, capable of rendering me susceptible to such pressure. Seeing my calm demeanor further infuriated Zhang Hang, his grip on my shoulder tightening. I truly despise your unruffled and indifferent disposition. I should have tried harder last time. Before he could finish his sentence, he suddenly doubled over, clutching his gland, and let out a pained groan. I turned in confusion, only to find myself ensnared by a pair of dark, piercing eyes. There stood Lu Wenchuan, his expression inscrutable. When Mo, come here. Ah, the power of pheromone suppression. Impressive indeed. 4. I swiftly made my way behind Lu Wenchuan, discreetly gesturing a middle finger at Zhang Hang, an unmistakable display of bravado. This only served to further ignite Zhang Hang's ire. When Mo were not done talking, Lu Wenchuan lifted his eyelids slightly. If you have something to say it to me. Lu Wenchuan, this is a matter between him and me. When Mo and I are roommates, is it not acceptable for me to listen? Zhang Hang's expression was one of displeasure, but he dared not approach to forcibly drag me away, for his complexion had turned frightfully pale, sweat beading on his forehead. Zhang Hang was no lightweight. He had always strutted around the campus, yet now he stood powerless against Lu Wenchuan's presence. The cafeteria patrons had all turned to watch, and thanks to Lu Wenchuan's prominence, this confrontation would surely spread like wildfire throughout the university. Ultimately, Zhang Hang shot me a vicious glare before storming off. I exhaled a sigh of relief and hurriedly expressed my gratitude. Lu Wenchuan, thank you. No need to thank me. Consider it repayment for last night's favor. I understood. Lu Wenchuan was quite appreciative of kindness. However, I refrained from pressing my luck and maintained my politeness. Lu Wenchuan, would you like to join me for a meal? I had expected him to decline, but to my surprise, he took a seat directly across from me, casually inquiring who the earlier individual was. I contemplated for a moment before offering a vague explanation. Yes, my former roommate. We had some disagreements. Did he bully you? Yes. Why would someone bully you without cause? Lu Wenchuan, like a curious child, bombarded me with questions, and I felt compelled to respond, albeit vaguely. Perhaps he perceives me as someone without much temperament. Lu Wenchuan simply murmured in acknowledgement, choosing not to probe further. I quietly sighed in relief, hastily returning to my meal. I truly was an innocuous and harmless presence. 5. In truth, Zhang Hang's bullying was not solely due to my meekness. At its core, he was infatuated with me. Each time he gazed at me, there was an unmistakable and crude desire in his eyes. Initially, he would inadvertently brush against me, but it escalated to him brazenly barging into the bathroom while I was showering, leering at me with a smirk, and verbally harassing me. I had made it abundantly clear that I neither intended to marry nor sought a partner of equal standing to share my life. Ultimately, we were worlds apart. I advised him not to waste his time on me, as my underdeveloped glands could neither accept pheromones nor be marked. Yet, he persisted, as if afflicted with some obsession. For a long time, I dreaded returning to that two-person dormitory. Eventually, I could no longer endure it and requested a room change, which led to my unexpected pairing with the aloof Lu Wenchuan. Zhang Hang had once sought me out in my new dorm, but the lingering scent of Lu Wenchuan's pheromones deterred him. He would sense the suppression and feel uncomfortable, leaving him only to glare at me in frustration. I hadn't anticipated encountering him again today. Thankfully, Lu Wenchuan was there. I slowly sipped my porridge, contemplating my next steps. Avoidance was not a solution. I needed to carve out a new path. Since Zhang Heng harbors a fear of Lu Wenchuan, I shall deliberately draw nearer to him. After all, A being of such esteemed caliber is unlikely to take notice of someone as inconspicuous as I. His attention is far more likely to be captivated by the delicate and alluring. I will simply seek to bask in the essence of Lu Wenchuan's pheromones, without causing any disturbance to him. In doing so, Zhang Heng will surely think twice before attempting to bully me. I felt a profound satisfaction with this plan, quietly chuckling to myself without realizing the gaze that lingered upon me from across the way. Having resolved my intentions, I decided to actively close the distance with Lu Wenchuan. However, I found myself at a loss as to how to approach him. As discussed in our physiology class, holding hands and embracing are the most effective methods for pheromone exchange. Not to mention kissing and marking, which are even more intimate forms of contact. Yet, I could never dare to engage in such actions with Lu Wenchuan. The mere thought of awkwardly brushing against his hand only to receive a swift reprimand filled me with trepidation. Thus, I must resort to subtler means. Either I could cling to him, fostering a friendship that would naturally lead to physical closeness, or I could surreptitiously acquire a few of his garments, as the lingering pheromones would suffice. Of course, pilfering his clothing would be a last resort, for if Lu Wenchuan were to catch me, I would be no better than a pervert. Since the goal is to bridge the gap, the first step must be to treat him to a meal. Consequently, during breakfast, I took the initiative to swipe my card to pay for his meal. Lu Wenchuan, let me cover this. Consider it a token of gratitude for your support, I offered. All right, he replied, casting a brief glance my way, accepting my gesture without protest. Upon leaving the cafeteria, I feigned that our classrooms were in the same direction, shamelessly extending our walk together. Thanks to his presence, I found myself turning heads at an astonishing rate. Initially, I felt a flutter of anxiety, but seeing Lu Wenchuan so composed allowed me to relax into a similar tranquility. Such composure, after all, is cultivated through experience. When Lu Wenchuan suddenly called my name with a calm demeanor, I immediately turned to face him. What is it? Could you accompany me to the hospital after class? Is your sensitivity period not over yet? It has been somewhat inexplicably unstable this time. I need to undergo a thorough examination. I would prefer that others remain unaware of this matter. I grasped the situation with a degree of understanding. The sensitivity period is likely the only vulnerability of a being of such stature. With a temperament that is fierce, irritable, possessive, and territorial, he is reluctant to divulge his affairs to others. Lu Wenchuan has always walked his path alone, devoid of friends. At this juncture, he requires my benign presence to care for him, especially since I had accompanied him the previous night. I was undoubtedly the prime candidate. I readily assented, of course. After all, spending more time with him would allow me to absorb more of his pheromones. After class, I accompanied Lu Wenchuan to the hospital. The doctor examined the report with a grave expression, his brow furrowed. Young man, your condition appears to be quite severe. Your pheromones are excessively abundant and uncontrolled, which has led to a disruption in your sensitivity period. This is potentially fatal. Most individuals would likely turn pale upon hearing such words from a doctor. Yet the young man remained calm, his features stoic as he spoke with startling candor. Will I die? Not likely, but it is indeed a complicated situation, necessitating that I notify your guardians. For a moment, Lu Wenchuan fell silent. When I glanced at him with suspicion, he finally spoke in a nonchalant tone. Is it necessary? He probably one T-cum. That is not an option. Should any complications arise, we require a direct relative's signature. Oh, then do as you must. I blinked in confusion. Why did his expression grow even colder? Was he afraid his father would come to reprimand him? As it turned out, what transpired was even more distressing. Shortly thereafter, his father arrived. Upon seeing him, I felt the oppressive aura that accompanies someone who has long occupied a position of power. He was like a more mature version of Lu Wenchuan. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had seen his father on some television channel. Indeed, dragons beget dragons, and phoenixes beget phoenixes. The tales of Lu Wenchuan's illustrious family were certainly grounded in reality. His father was truly formidable. Yet, his father's expression was cold and distant, as if he had come not to check on his ailing son but to confront an adversary. After briefly inquiring about the situation from the doctor, he turned to Lu Wenchuan and coldly chastised him. Is this trivial matter worthy of summoning me to the hospital? Do you have any idea how many meetings I must postpone due to your whims? You were willful and obstinate as a child, and now you've grown into this disgraceful state. Lu Wenchuan remained silent, and I was taken aback. Surely, when a child is unwell, scolding is not the appropriate response. I bore it as long as I could, but eventually, I could no longer contain myself. Just as Lu's father began to reprimand again, I stood up abruptly, positioning myself in front of Lu Wenchuan. Uncle Lu, he is unwell. As a parent, you should at least express concern for him instead of immediately resorting to admonishment. Is a meeting more important than your own child's well-being? Lu's father seemed taken aback by my audacity, momentarily stunned, though his gaze remained lofty and disdainful. Who are you? Do you have any right to speak here? My bravado quickly faded, and the adrenaline surged out of my system, leaving me trembling. Yet, at that moment, a large hand encircled my wrist. Lu Wenchuan's voice followed, firm and resolute, he is mine. As Lu's father was about to frown, the door to the examination room swung open. A figure resembling a secretary approached, whispering urgent words that indicated a pressing matter. Throughout this time, Lu Wenchuan continued to hold my hand. I sensed the warmth of his fingers grazing my wrist, sending tingles through my skin. The sensation heightened my awareness, and a wave of apprehension washed over me. I edged closer to him and cautiously asked, Lu Wenchuan, did I overstep? The boy turned his head, fixing his deep gaze upon me, warmth radiating from his eyes as if he had stumbled upon a hidden treasure. Instead of answering, he posed a question of his own. Wenmo, I had no idea you possessed such courage. I felt a surge of fear. I merely thought you were too pitiful, is it? He replied, a gentle smile gracing his lips, leaving me at a loss for words, hesitant to inadvertently bruise his pride. It's not a significant matter. Once you leave this hospital, he won't recall who you are. Ah, does uncle have a poor memory? Lu Wenchuan chuckled lightly, though I sensed a hint of sarcasm. He simply deems it unimportant, which is why he won't remember. Similarly, family matters hold less weight than official business. You should aspire to grander ambitions rather than getting caught up in trivialities. Therefore, do not take offense. You will grow accustomed to it. I fell silent for a moment, feeling an even deeper sense of compassion for him. Behind the facade of glamour and adoration lies a profound emotional detachment from familial ties, a stark absence of concern. How tragic it is to navigate life with such high demands and standards. It seems that strength is their only path forward. Hesitantly, I considered offering him comfort, but just then, Lu's father returned his gaze toward us. His eyes seemed to linger on the point where Lu Wenchuan's hand clasped my wrist. Strangely, although he exerted no force, my wrist began to flush with color, creating an undeniably awkward atmosphere. I felt increasingly uncomfortable. Fortunately, Lu Wenchuan's father did not dwell on the matter. Lu Wenchuan, if you are unwell, seek medical attention. If funds are lacking, request assistance from your secretary. Do not burden me with your concerns. Understood, father. After saying this, his father departed. The oppressive atmosphere in the examination room dissipated sharply, yet Lu Wenchuan still did not release my hand. I dared not pull away, so I acquiesced, secretly relishing the opportunity to absorb more of his pheromones. The trembling doctor beside us adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. Do not be afraid, my student. Although this ailment appears formidable, it is quite straightforward to treat. All you need to do is release some pheromones. How does one release them? Find a partner to transfer the pheromones to. Ah, what a splendid solution. It not only addresses the ailment but also facilitates the chance to find companionship. However, Lu Wenchuan coldly rejected the idea. I have no desire to mark anyone. The doctor was momentarily at a loss for words. That is acceptable as well. Lu Wenchuan merely flicked his eyelids. I disliked that even more. I blinked in surprise. If neither option was viable, then, at this moment, the doctor interjected. That, too, is feasible. It is safer and can accommodate more of your pheromones. Is there someone suitable nearby who can assist you? With this, Lu Wenchuan finally reacted. He shook his slender wrist, which belonged to me, and then turned his head to gaze at me, who was utterly taken aback. His eyes were dark and luminous, reminiscent of a deep ocean. Yes, 1mo. Can you help me? I stammered. Huh? Ah? Sometimes one truly feels helpless and astonished. As a mere omega, I never anticipated a day when I would be marked by a top-tier alpha. Indeed, once marked, there would be no responsibilities, no marking, and no lingering concerns. I was simply a safe tool. After a moment's hesitation, I agreed, as it would not only aid Lu Wenchuan but also allow me to absorb more pheromones to shield myself from Zhang Hang's bullying. The doctor kindly led us to a secluded observation room and then thoughtfully closed the door behind him. It left only the anxious me and my composed roommate. He brushed his fingertips across the nape of my neck, sending shivers down my spine. Lu Wenchuan seemed to relish this small gesture, making me feel akin to a small animal, albeit one awaiting slaughter. Moments later, he spoke softly. 1mo, Where are your glands? I timidly glanced at him, then reached up to grasp one of his fingers, guiding it to a spot on the left side of my nape. Here. I also possessed glands, though they were far less prominent, enticing, and lacked the distinct pheromonal scent. They merely lay there, concealed by the ends of my hair. They bore little difference from before differentiation, devoid of any sensitivity characteristic of secondary sexual organs. I had once inadvertently seen the glands of other omegas. How to put it? They were entirely uninspiring. Yet now, Lu Wenchuan was curiously caressing the area, his gaze fixated upon it, and I could sense an inexplicable heat in his eyes. The friction of his fingertips ignited an unfamiliar warmth, intensifying the itch. It made me instinctively want to retract my neck, but he firmly pressed my head down. Lower your head. I am going to bite you. If it becomes uncomfortable, just tell me. I could only clutch my pants with a sense of impending doom. Okay. In the next moment, a breath brushed against my nape, and before I could even gasp, he had bitten down. Pain. It hurt intensely. I could feel his teeth piercing through, bringing forth an unusual sensation. Just as I was about to plead for mercy, I felt a powerful surge of pheromones flooding into my withered glands. It coursed through my bloodstream, transforming my cries of pain into unbearable whimpers. I was overwhelmed, yearning to escape, yet Lu Wenchuan held me captive, his grip tightening around my neck. Wait a moment. Endure it. I lost all sense of time, and when I finally regained my composure, I found myself languidly sprawled in his arms. One of his hands continued to knead my swollen glands, while his eyes remained fixed on me. The posture was undeniably intimate. I sniffled, slowly articulating, Lu Wenchuan, your pheromones seem to carry the scent of first snow. The boy paused momentarily. You can sense it? I can barely catch a whiff. It smells delightful. I genuinely remarked. Lu Wenchuan reached up to wipe away the moisture at the corner of my eye, leisurely stating, I can smell your scent as well. It is quite fragrant. I was taken aback. Fragrant? Me? I felt a twinge of confusion. Perhaps it was merely the lingering aroma of my shower gel, and I dismissed the thought. Once my legs regained their strength, the doctor conducted another examination on Lu Wenchuan. The results were promising. His susceptibility period had improved drastically, and his pheromones were no longer in disarray. While the two conversed briefly about subsequent treatments, I rubbed the area on my nape that still throbbed faintly. Stealing glances at Lu Wenchuan's profile, I mused that I was indeed a competent tool. I could not help but wonder if, after being bitten by Lu Wenchuan, the scent of pheromones emanating from me was potent. I took a few deep sniffs, but relying solely on my nose yielded no discernible results. It seemed that the fleeting hint of first snow I had sensed in that moment of passion was a delightful fluke. I reminisced about that sensation, feeling a tingle at the back of my head, my blood boiling. How enchanting it was, clear and crisp, like the serene aftermath of a snowfall. It perfectly matched Lu Wenchuan's cool and reserved demeanor. In any case, thanks to this examination, I felt the distance between Lu Wenchuan and myself diminishing rapidly. Previously, he would treat me as if I were invisible, even forgetting my name. Now, having shared a life and death bond, he had learned to engage in casual conversation with me. At times, before I even realized it, he would drape his arm around my shoulders, his fingers occasionally brushing against the nape of my neck, as if he were dissatisfied with something. When I felt a bit bewildered, he would lean down to attentively listen to my trivial chatter, his handsome face looming large before me, making me forget everything else. He would enter and exit alongside me, sometimes even waiting for me after class to dine together. On one occasion, when his susceptibility period faltered once more, he pinned me against a dark corner of the school park and bit me again. It felt so exhilaratingly clandestine. Yet, if I slightly defied Lu Wenchuan, he would cast a fleeting glance my way, exuding an overwhelming possessiveness that left me with no choice but to comply. Such dominance was both formidable and exceptional. Beneath his cool and taciturn exterior lay an absolute core of authority, immensely captivating. No wonder the alphas at school were infatuated with him, fervently yearning to be marked. It made my heart race on occasion. However, I refused to overthink it, believing all of this to be merely a residual effect of the previous marking for treatment. I continued to focus on absorbing his pheromones. According to the theoretical knowledge from my textbooks, pheromones do not linger for long and will dissipate quickly. I could only aim to absorb as much as possible. Even the scent embedded in my clothing would suffice. I must admit my efforts bore fruit. Within a few days, a familiar classmate remarked that there seemed to be a hint of pheromonal fragrance wafting from me. They could not pinpoint it but found it rather overwhelming. I felt a surge of joy. I clung to Lu Wenchuan even tighter, voraciously absorbing the essence of the esteemed alpha. Many whispered that I had latched onto a powerful ally. Lu Wenchuan, however, could hardly be bothered to deny it, and I certainly wouldn't offer any explanations. Zhang Heng likely caught wind of the rumors, for every time he saw me at school, his expression darkened, and his gaze turned venomous. Yet he dared not approach. What a coward. I had thought he would gradually cease his sordid thoughts about me, but to my astonishment, he had something far more significant in store. On that fateful afternoon, Lu Wenchuan had an elective class. Thus, I returned to the dormitory alone, intending to catch up on some sleep before joining him for dinner. During the class hours, the corridor was nearly deserted, enveloped in a profound silence. Just as I retrieved my keys and opened the dormitory door, I was suddenly approached by the sound of footsteps from behind, drawing closer. With a sense of suspicion, I turned around only to be yanked into the water room at the end of the corridor. With a resounding slam, the door was shut behind me, and I found myself pressed heavily against the door panel. The doorknob dug painfully into my abdomen, my face pressed against the door, unable to struggle. The intruder possessed strength far exceeding my own. When you've become audacious, allowing other pheromones to linger on you, and getting so close to Lu Wenchuan. Wait, what's that on your neck? Is that a bite mark? Who did this, Lu Wenchuan? The frenzy in his voice could only belong to Zhang Heng. I stifled a cry of pain and retorted coldly, "What business is it of yours? Let me go, or I swear I won't spare you this time." This time, Zhang Heng pressed against me even tighter, his voice a venomous whisper near my ear. "Last time you merely kicked me and then stealthily changed dorms to avoid me. Today, I could very well strip you of your pants and force myself upon you here, and no one would ever know, because you are an omega, and pheromones will leave no trace." As he spoke, his rage flared anew. He suddenly grasped my chin, forcing my face to turn toward him, his eyes brimming with an unhealthy obsession. "But I despise that you are an omega. If only you were an alpha or even a beta. Why must you be an omega?" I scoffed derisively because being an omega is the most liberating. "Want to mark me? Want to possess me? Dream on." Zhang Heng's cruel smile widened. "Then I shall torment you until you become aware of my pheromones, until every inch of you is tainted by my scent. What is Lu Wenchuan to you?" With that, he began tugging at my pants. I ready to kick back in retaliation, prepared to fight. Suddenly, Zhang Heng clutched his gland and let out a pained scream, collapsing to the floor and inadvertently pulling me down with him. How had this transpired? Had I not yet struck him? As I looked up in bewilderment, I witnessed Lu Wenchuan slowly pushing the water room door open, standing imposingly at the threshold, a sheen of sweat glistening on his forehead from his hurried entrance, his Adam's apple moving subtly. His gaze was icy and devoid of warmth. "I am your father." Lu Wenchuan delivered a decisive kick that sent Zhang Heng sprawling away from me. The force was evidently substantial, for Zhang Heng's cries escalated in agony. I stared in confusion at Lu Wenchuan's unexpected appearance. "Aren't you supposed to be in class? I sensed you were in danger, so I rushed over." Sensed? Lu Wenchuan lifted me effortlessly, enveloping me in his embrace. He immediately became affectionate. As I instinctively attempted to wriggle free, he raised a hand to pinch the nape of my neck, applying pressure to the gland just below my hairline. "Last time I bit you, I left a trace of my pheromones here. They dissipate quickly, so I have continued to leave them behind. This way I can monitor your condition." I blinked in disbelief. Was this truly the capability of a top-tier alpha? I had assumed such phenomena existed only in online articles, as no one had ever witnessed them in reality. Yet, it was indeed real. But when had he begun to intentionally mark me with his pheromones? Such an act was undeniably laden with ambiguity. No, not just this act. Every gesture Lu Wenchuan now made spurred my heart to race. However, his expression was somewhat grim, his countenance pale as he averted his gaze to me. "Wie Montag. Why didn't you fight back when you were bullied?" Feeling embarrassed, I realized he had likely heard about my prior experiences of being bullied before I changed dorms. I fidgeted with my hands, attempting to explain. "Yes, an alpha. I can't fight him. In this society, handsomeness and stature symbolize power, while intelligence and beauty signify the capacity for reproduction. Only omegas fade into the background. If I reported him, Zhang Heng would merely face a minor consequence, swiftly return, and seek revenge. When indeed, implies a gentle yet passive nature, always inclined to endure." Observing my pitiable state, Lu Wenchuan tightened his grip on my neck. I found myself awkwardly tumbling into his embrace, our chests pressed together, reminiscent of the ambiguous scene that unfolded after he had bitten me. Yet his expression remained stern and unyielding. Then why did you dare to speak up for me at the hospital? When Mo, you're not actually timid. Your soul is pliable, yet you never compromise. Am I correct? Just as I was about to push his hand away, I lifted my gaze to meet Lu Wenchuan's, filled with complexity and astonishment. My heart, already racing, surged even faster. When Zhang Heng's cries began to diminish, I nodded slowly. Yes, that's right. I reported the incident to the authorities. As Zhang Heng was taken away, he cast a fixed, obsessive glare in my direction. I had no desire to engage with him, completing my statement and heading directly back to the dormitory with Lu Wenchuan. Yet, as we left, I caught a glimpse of Lu Wenchuan's father's secretary. Huh? What was he doing here? Before I could examine further, Lu Wenchuan draped his arm over my shoulder, leading me away. The atmosphere remained as tranquil as ever. We occasionally lapsed into silence, interspersed with casual conversation. For reasons I couldn't quite discern, I felt a nagging sensation in my chest. After showering, I lay on my bed, unconsciously stealing glances at the young man changing clothes across the room. Lu Wenchuan was right. I wasn't afraid of Zhang Heng. I simply didn't wish to expend energy confronting a troublesome pervert. However, if he dared to bully me again today, I would not hesitate to retaliate. An omega for an alpha, it was a fair trade. Yet Lu Wenchuan had abruptly entered my previously placid life. I had thought he merely viewed me as a tool, perhaps a reasonably good roommate, but he had seen through me. How should I put it? It felt as if a once mundane existence had suddenly been accentuated with vibrant strokes of color. In other words, I had been profoundly acknowledged. A warm current surged within me, filling me with an inexplicable fondness. I hastily pinched myself, attempting to curtail the emergence of inappropriate thoughts. What was I thinking? How could I possibly entertain such feelings? If Lu Wenchuan found out, he might very well knock me out with a single blow. While I was silently admonishing myself, Lu Wenchuan, clad only in sleep shorts, suddenly approached my bed. In my bewildered gaze, he effortlessly climbed up the bed ladder and nestled into my small space. I immediately felt the palpable pressure radiating from him. Swallowing hard, I grasped the situation. Lu Wenchuan, has your sensitivity period begun? Yes. Lu Wenchuan affirmed. The dormitory lights had yet to be extinguished, allowing me to discern his striking physique and the depth in his eyes. My eyelashes fluttered, my heart racing uncontrollably. Fearing he might notice the indecorous longing within my gaze, I obediently extended my neck toward him, a subtle gesture of appeasement. Then go ahead and bite me. As soon as the words left my lips, I felt his teeth sink into me. The force was far greater than before, overwhelming me, and I sensed a hint of the flavor of fresh snow. Lu Wenchuan bit for what felt like an eternity, long enough for me to feel I was drowning, left with no choice but to plead for mercy. Lu Wenchuan, I senti it enough yet? He ambiguously yet discontentedly inquired. Mo, why can't you retain my pheromones? I cannot be marked. I was uncertain which word had struck a nerve with Lu Wenchuan, as he forcefully pressed me into the bed. His tone was cold and merciless. How would you know unless you try? What? Before I could articulate my response, he bit down harder. After what felt like an eternity, he finally released his grip. Just as I intended to raise my hand to soothe the already mangled gland, a soft, moist sensation emanated from the nape of my neck. The gesture was decidedly tender. My eyes widened in realization. Lu Wenchuan was licking the back of my neck. Lu Wenchuan, don't move, you're bleeding. There was an inexplicable bitterness. In that moment, my face flushed, my heart raced, and my breath became increasingly erratic. After a while, I was finally liberated. Dazed, I turned back to find my gaze locking with Lu Wenchuan's. The mere exchange of glances sent shivers down my spine. His eyes were filled with a palpable and unmistakable irritation of unfulfilled desire. The remnants of my rationality warned me that he still longed to bite me. Very much so. It even hinted at a somewhat familiar pathology. Upon realizing that I had discovered his intentions, Lu Wenchuan unashamedly continued, uttering words that made me uneasy, his hand still caressing my reddened lips from my earlier restraint. Mo, sometimes I find Zhang Heng's words quite reasonable. Why aren't you either a or a? That way, I could keep you by my side, allowing my pheromones to saturate your body. If that's not feasible, it's fine. I could keep you confined in my vicinity, ensuring that you can only see me. I was rendered speechless, utterly at a loss. When did Lu Wenchuan develop such perverse thoughts about me? I hadn't noticed a thing. It was confounding. Why on earth was I attracting someone like him? Attracting someone like Zhang Heng might frustrate me, but with Lu Wenchuan, it was entirely different. I felt joy, shyness, and confusion. Perhaps my silence led him to mistakenly believe I was frightened, prompting him to retract his hand, reverting to his rational, indifferent self. If not for the trace of my saliva lingering on his finger, he would have appeared quite composed. When I apologize, I acted impulsively. I shook my head, hastily pulling his finger back and murmuring uneasily, "It's fine. Lu Wenchuan, you can bite me however you wish." His brows arched in surprise. When your word sounds somewhat like an informal invitation. What constitutes a formal invitation, then? To date me and I'll bite you, allowing things to unfold naturally. But you haven't confessed your feelings. My gaze wandered. Indeed, him wanting to claim me didn't necessarily imply that he liked me. I was uncertain if such a bashful request would embarrass him. After he heard my thoughts, Lu Wenchuan leaned closer, his voice low and melodious. When I like you. I don't want anyone else to covet you, nor do I wish to be with anyone else. Date me, kiss me, help me through my sensitive period, and after graduation we'll marry. I was left speechless. This man was thinking quite far ahead. I couldn't help but chuckle. I leaned up and kissed his cheek. All right, what does a cheek kiss mean? Lu Wenchuan withdrew his finger, firmly grasped my chin, and kissed me anew. It was an act that left no room for rebuttal, and I found myself lost in it. Faintly, I caught a whiff of the scent of first snow. In a daze, I suddenly recalled an obscure piece of knowledge from my textbook. It is said that if a top-tier individual holds affection for someone, they can even discern the scent of that person's pheromones. End of main text. Epilogue. Lu Wenchuan's psychological diary. Day 1. A new roommate seems to have moved into the dormitory. Lacking pheromones, they should be an omega. Not interested. Day 3. Unusually, I returned to the dorm early after basketball and encountered that new roommate. Tall and slender, with a rather delicate appearance. They seem to possess a rather gentle temperament. Even their voice when greeting is soft. Still not interested. Day 7. My little roommate goes to bed early and rises early, running away upon seeing me. Fine, as long as they don't disturb me. Day 15. How tiresome. Why is my father always so busy? Day 30. My sensitive period has flared up. I want to hit someone to upend this world. Supplement. It turns out my roommate is named Wenmo, and I caught him stealing glances at me. Somewhat adorable. He piques my interest a bit. Day 31. Someone bullied Wenmo, and out of courtesy, I helped him once. Yet, I noticed him secretly sizing me up and chuckling to himself. What's so amusing? So easily satisfied? Then I'll draw a little closer to him. Thus, I decided to take him to the hospital, not anticipating that it would alert my father. Fine, another scolding. I'm used to it. It was just this time that when Mo stood up for me, I gazed at his slender back, which appeared calm yet was filled with trepidation. My interest suddenly multiplied, accompanied by an inexplicable sense of possessiveness. This roommate truly surprised me. I wanted to protect him, to keep him close. Hence, I bit him. But even though he lacked pheromones, I still found him to possess a certain alluring fragrance. It carried a youthful, enticing scent. He even spoke to me with glistening eyes, uttering words that left me parched, claiming my pheromones smelled of first snow. What difference does that have from directly asking me what flavor I preferred? I was just somewhat dissatisfied. Why did my pheromones dissipate from Wenmo's body in less than 10 minutes? Day 32. I began to approach Wenmo more actively, intending to discreetly leave my pheromones on him. Yet each attempt was in vain. My pheromones lasted only a few minutes, requiring me to continually emit them toward him. How annoying. Why is he just an omega? Day 40. Today, I glanced at Wenmo's gland and noticed the bite mark from last time was nearly gone. I suddenly felt an urge to bite again. So, under the pretext of sensitive period disorder, I dragged him into the school's grove. I bit his gland, feeling the pulse of his carotid artery beneath my palm. Alive and obedient. Even when I bit him, he merely whimpered softly. His eyes and mouth flushed like cherries, like the evening glow. My dissatisfaction grew. Day 50. I sensed Zhang Hang bullying Wenmo. I hurried back to rescue him, secretly calling my father to punish that idiot. My father, who usually shows little interest in my private matters, curiously asked for the first time, Lu Wenchuan, are you in a relationship? Not yet. That little omega? You remember him? The one who defied me? Of course I remember. Useless. Can't even pursue an omega. Yes, timid. It takes time. An omega can't be kept close. What's the use of taking your time? Useless. I know. As long as you know. My secretary will handle the matter for your little boyfriend. Focus on your relationship, don't interfere. My father coldly hung up. Yet I secretly smiled. It turned out my father remembered Wenmo. He wasn't entirely devoid of humanity. I turned to look at when Mo, who was patiently waiting for me. His fair, delicate face still bore a hint of the violence he had endured. He had little presence yet stood out distinctly. Utterly adorable, he made my heart ache with fondness. It seems that everything has improved significantly since encountering Wenmo. Therefore, I must ensure that my pheromones completely permeate his being. He is free, yet he belongs to me. He can only be mine. The end of the narrative. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing and liking to show your support. Until we meet again for the next story.